And then if you'd like to ask questions as we're going along, please raise your hand for this next part. But I'm going to turn it over to Ellis and let him introduce the congressman who has just arrived.
Thank you, Evan. I have been coaching a few candidates in the last election, and I told them that what's important is a narrative, and I've used Eric's narrative as the example of what a good narrative is. And Eric's narrative goes something like this. His father was a sheriff in Iowa, and it seems that some of the people in the Iowa town, some of the political figures in the Iowa town parked illegally and got some tickets and parking tickets. And they asked Eric's father to fix the tickets. And Eric's father refused. He got fired by the Iowa town and moved to Dublin, California. And the lesson that Eric brought from this, and I've heard him say this on many times on television, no one is above the law. And we're very proud that Eric is part of our family. He joined this club when he was 18 years old. Tim Sabrante was his civics teacher and the president of the club, and convinced Eric to be the club secretary. I first met Eric in 2008 when he was chair of the United Democratic Campaign, the Tri-Valley United Democratic Campaign, that opened the campaign office for Barack Obama and our down ticket candidates in Pleasanton. And still get a thrill down my spine every time I introduce him. Our favorite congressman, don't tell Mark DeSaulnier I said that. Our favorite congressman, one of our favorite congressmen, Eric Swalwell. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Ellis. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you to the club for having me back. And also want to recognize, I see council members Arkin and Testa from Pleasanton on the call as well. So thank you for joining us. Yeah, Ellis, you know, that was my earliest memory as a kid, being 5 years old and your dad telling you that he was probably going to be fired. And I didn't understand what that term meant. I just thought he was going to be put in a fire, and that's why it stuck with me. But I later learned that he was willing to lose his job to stand up against corruption, and he did. And that's why we moved our little family out west. And I'm glad ultimately that he had that courage, you know. But to be honest, Ellis, he doesn't really like me recounting that story. He feels a sense of shame as, you know, the father of the family, that he lost his job. And I always tell him, Dad, that was the best lesson that I could have learned as a kid, that no one is above the law. And I hope I applied it the right way, you know, in both impeachments against Donald Trump, that whether you're the mayor of a small town in Iowa or you're the president of the United States, that we all have to follow the same laws. And here we find ourselves, right? It's so refreshing, you know, 100+ days post the inauguration of Joe Biden, Donald Trump in the rearview mirror, you know, deplatformed from Twitter. But of course, just because Donald Trump is no longer in office, that does not mean that racism and corruption and misogyny have gone away. They're still presenting themselves in many, you know, Trump emulating forms, whether it's, you know, Marjorie Trader Greene or many of the colleagues that she serves with. We're battling against them every single day. But what I was hoping to talk about tonight at the club, and then really, frankly, just go to questions, was that my sense of things and where we are right now is that the 2020 election we believed would settle Trumpism versus democracy, that, you know, we would be able to get a result that would show either we're going to drift farther into Trumpism or we're going to redeem the country and reclaim democracy. But the result ultimately, with the Senate being 50-50 and Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the tie, and the House being a 3-vote majority, and the presidency being 6 states and about 50,000 votes, that it's not settled at all. In fact, if this was a basketball game, Joe Biden winning in 2020 was essentially the Warriors hitting a 3-pointer at the buzzer to send the game into overtime. And that's where I think we are right now, is we are in overtime. And it's not settled yet as to whether we will drift into Trumpism or redeem our democracy, that the margins are so tight at every level of government that we at least know the stakes for what's ahead. Now, I'm heartened that we were able to pass the America Rescue Plan. And I hope that you or somebody you know who's struggled with COVID, whether on the health side or the economic employment side, have benefited from the shots in the arms, the money in the pockets, the relief for small businesses, that is being distributed, where the need is most, pronounced. We also have going forward the America Jobs Plan, which is, a bold investment in infrastructure. And for me at home, that really means Valley Link. And, earmarks are back in Congress in a more responsible, transparent way. And I've requested $10 million to go toward Valley Link. And I think that's going to be accepted. And the hope is to expand, 42 miles from Dublin Pleasanton into Stockton, 12 stops along the way, 125 miles per hour on that, train ride, taking 30,000 people off the road each day, which, of course, knowing that, emissions from cars are the greatest cause of, climate change, that we could do our own part here in the Tri-Valley. So that, we're on the move. And the American Family Plan would be, child care tax credits and paid family leave for all, recognizing, the human capital and infrastructure that we have to invest in. So going into the midterm elections, if we can see the rescue plan fully achieved, pass the jobs and family plan, I would much rather be our side with an economy that is roaring and, in renaissance, unemployment coming down, America vaccinated, people back in schools, pews, on main streets. That's a campaign to run on. But as well as I do, that historically, during the first midterm election for a first-term president, the president's party suffers losses in the House and the Senate. And so you have good reason to be skeptical. But I would submit to you that, these ain't any old times. And, post-coup, post-impeachment, post-Trump, and post-pandemic, that we've got a reason to be optimistic. And I hope that today you feel a sense of optimism, and that optimism begets more optimism, because going into the midterms, knowing my act and my scene, I want to focus on the House of Representatives and how do we protect the most vulnerable seats, but how do we also expand, the majority that we have. And California, frankly, is ground zero for what we have to do. We have to protect, in Northern California, Josh Harder. And then going south, we have Congress members Katie Porter, Jim Costa, and Mike Levin. If we can protect those 4, who are some of the most vulnerable in the state, and then add the 4 seats that we lost in 2020. We lost a seat in Orange County with Harley Ruda. We lost a seat with TJ Cox in the Central Valley. We also, in addition to Ruda and Cox, we lost a seat with Gil Cisneros as well in the Central Valley. And then Katie Hill, that was an LA County seat that we had. We lost that seat as well. If we add those 4 back, all achievable, we will do our part to keep the majority in the House of Representatives. And so the challenge I want to kind of lay on the table for all of you is, in very short time, we're going to know through redistricting what those districts look like. We're going to know the candidates that are stepping up to run and win those districts. And my promise is I will invest whatever it takes to do our part to make the phone calls, send the text messages, and provide the buses and hotel rooms to go into those districts and door knock so that we can win. and that we can protect. And I hope you're with me in that effort. Many of you were with us in 2018 when we had, the effort to win the House, and we did that out of the IBEW hall. And I see Greg Bonato, because Greg was so kind to turn over that hall to us, and we took over the second floor. And on election night in 2018, it was very, very thrilling and exciting to see our hard work, play out as races were called all over the country that we had all worked on and called into. And we can do the same work here, and we don't have to look any farther than our own state. So we don't have to call this time into Texas. We don't have to bus into Arizona. If we just protect the seats in California and pick up the 4 that we lost in 2020, we will have done our job to keep and expand and grow the majority. So that's what we're going to be focused on. And I look forward to coming back to the club to lay out what we have to do with that regard. But in addition to the rescue plan, I just want to say, many of the social justice issues persist. Seeing the Senate pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, passing the background checks as well that we've already passed in the House over in the Senate. And most importantly, I think the most significant, impactful legislation we could pass would be the For the People Act, to make sure we get rid of dirty money and dirty maps in our politics. That means if we don't have 10 votes in the Senate, break the damn filibuster to pass that legislation. Break it, break it, break it. It'll make all the difference in the world. And I know you're with me on encouraging and suggesting that. So I'm going to turn it back over to the club right now for any questions you all may have. But again, it's just an honor to be with you. I'm excited for in-person events coming back. We have a barbecue at Gare Winery in Livermore the Saturday before Father's Day. I'll send out to all of you information about that event. It's going to be our first in-person event since the pandemic in the Tri-Valley, and I'd love if all of you could show up and let's just is the vaccinated, the people that suffered through this, hug each other, and plan and plot our way to building back better as a country. So Ellis, I'm going to turn it back to all of you.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll take you from here.
Or Evan. Yeah, thanks, Evan.
Yeah, no worries. I know you've been working with Ellis for a long time. So so I wanted to first just really thank you very much for coming out today. I really appreciate your time. And I wanted to just personally thank you and say that we sent you to Congress for your legislative ideas and your legislative acts, but now you've been a real testament to courage on really just standing up for democracy, which I did not think we were going to be fighting for, but we're fighting for really the core of what it means for the American experiment going forward and seeing democracy survive. And you have been out in front, leading on defending our right to vote for our elected officials, our right to have our voice be heard. And I just truly want to say that I appreciate everything you were doing there. And I believe the rest of the club absolutely backs me on this, and thanking you with all of our heart and soul for the fight that you are having right now and standing up bravely and strongly to fight for our rights. So thank you on that. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our members for questions. If you have any questions, just please raise your hand and I'll ask you to unmute. So you will need to click a button. But I'll start with Sean Kumagai.
Hey, Eric, it's good to see you.
Hey, council
thank
member.
you so much for being here.
Of course.
Well, first off, just a comment. You talk about the congressional districts here in California. So many of those, the Asian Pacific Islander community was really helpful, or was really helpful in closing the gap, in these really tight races. We were very disappointed to see Gil Cisneros not make it. And please just leverage the CDP, as the secretary for the CDP API caucus. We are ready to go next year and do the outreach to the API community, but also just run those events. And so often we lack the resources, we lack the call lists and the in language materials to make that happen. So please utilize us. My question is, though, actually around the next priority for the administration, and been hearing in the news that that might be immigration reform or some form of that. Can you talk a little bit about what the plans are there?
I think our district highlights why, when you have an all of the above immigration approach, it benefits everyone. And so, you know, we've passed in the House the DREAM Act, we've passed the farm worker bill, we're going to pass a high-skilled immigration bill. But, you know, in our district, of the 53 congressional seats across the country, across the state, we've had the most growth in the 15th congressional district. And that is in large part because of high-skilled visas, unaccompanied minors, undocumented, and family visas. We also are the 13th most wealthy district in America. And so that to me proves that a immigration policy that is open and welcoming also is an economic policy that means that everybody does better. And so that's why I'm going to continue to lean in on making sure that we pass comprehensive immigration reform. It's really on the Senate though, because, you know, we've passed these bills in the House, whether the Senate wants to take it up or not. You know, in 2014, 68 Republican and Democratic senators voted for comprehensive immigration reform. That's 8 more than you need to pass, you know, the filibuster-proof majority. So it's just a matter of, will they have the will to do it now? But I think our district proves that, you know, diversity is prosperity. And that's true not just here, but it can be true anywhere.
Thank you. Next, Anne.
Hi, Representative Swalwell. This is Anne Brown. Hi. For those who don't know me, I'm the group leader for Tri-Valley Citizens Climate Education. And we are really interested in hearing how you hope to help make climate solutions a bridge issue in order to gain more confidence of voters from across the spectrum to enact effective climate solutions. And as you may know, we would love to meet with you. Our lobby days are coming up in June. I have not back from your scheduler. So we're hoping that we can actually meet with you via Zoom and share with you our new version of our bill, which is the Energy Innovation and Climate Dividend Act, which installs a price on carbon. So we'd love to hear your perspective on climate solutions and how they can be a bridge issue. Thank you.
Of course, and I just put in the chat our scheduler's email address, so please use that. Our longtime scheduler just left us to go to the private sector, and so I fear that maybe there could have been you know, a loss in communication there. But send that to Olivia, our scheduler, and I promise that I'll be on that call, and you know, that aligns with, you know, what I want to do on climate. So thank you for working on that.
Thank you.
And next up is Kashif.
How you doing?
Kashif.
Hello, how are you? Just had a quick question, if you could address HR 2590.
Yep. So if I'm correct, 2590 is a resolution as it relates to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and making sure that funds toward Israel do not, you know, fund settlements or anything that, you know, dehumanizes, you know, Palestinians. And so I will take a look at it. When you posted it up there, I had to look it up. it had not yet been sent to me by the sponsor, but I've been working with J Street, and I'm a J Street endorsed candidate. And my pledge to J Street is that, you know, in the funding that we provide to Israel, you know, $3+ billion each year for their security assistance, in addition to funding that we provide, you know, to the Palestinians, that I would insist that, you know, that funding for Israel is not used to, you know, further enhance their settlements. I oppose settlements. I opposed moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem without a grand bargain that would include a 2-state solution. And while, you know, the attacks from Hamas and the rockets that fly into Israel are unprecedented in the amount, It gives Israel a right to defend itself. It also means that Israel has a responsibility, not to take innocent life, and also to be very, very careful and prevent against loss of life of journalists. And so I was troubled that, the building that AP and Al Jazeera were housed in was targeted. And so I support the call in the Senate, by 28 senators led by John Ossoff, to have a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire from both sides. I also support refunding the High Commission on Human Rights, which the Trump administration defunded because of its concerns over Israel, but refunding that program and continuing to provide robust funding to the Palestinians. But frankly, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is completely incapable of providing a two-state solution. I don't think he believes in it, and I think it's to the detriment of that cause that he remains as Prime Minister. And so I hope if there is a new Prime Minister in Israel, that the Biden administration will lean in and really impress upon the need to have a two-state solution, so that both sides, and I agree with Senator Sanders, who said this weekend, Palestinian lives matter, that they do matter, and that we could have that two-state solution.
Thank you. And next, Shri.
Hi, my name is Shri Rapidi. Thank you so much for being here, Congressman Swalwell. I'm a huge fan of your work, especially you leading the impeachment against Trump. My question for you is, why did you decide to run for president, and do you plan to run again or for another higher office in the future?
Shri, my doctor assures me that I have the antibodies for that, and so I will not be running again for president. I ran because, frankly, because of many of you. You helped me in 2018 in the pursuit to win the majority, support candidates that gave me hope that things could change in Washington. And 29 of the candidates that delivered the majority were in their 40s and under. And I thought, new energy, new ideas coming to Washington. 19 of those candidates beat NRA endorsed members of Congress. And so I was really inspired to believe that this was a generational shift. And so when I got into the race, I ran on generational issues like climate, student loan debt, ending gun violence, racial injustice. But I found an electorate that very much was risk averse to any candidate that would have a problem taking on Donald Trump. And I heard across the country, look, we love that you're running, but we cannot afford to lose to Donald Trump. And it was not a surprise at all to me that the three remaining candidates were the most experienced in, Vice President Biden, Senators Sanders and Warren. And frankly, I think the voters got it right, because we lurched into a pandemic, and the candidate that won on our side was the most seasoned and most experienced. And I happen to think that if Mayor Buttigieg or Beto or myself were the nominees, voters may have been skeptical about rolling the dice on a younger, less experienced candidate. So I think the voters, maybe by way of fate, or divine intervention, they got it right with, Joe Biden being our president. I learned a lot. I love doing it. I ran to win. I believed I could win. And I think I'm a better representative because I credibly raised issues that had not been raised before. But no, I love my job. I'm running for re-election and feel a sense of responsibility, especially on the issue of gun violence, to see that through.
All right, thank you. And just very quickly, to respect Representative Swalwell's time, we do want to wrap up at about the hour. So if you can keep your questions brief, that would be appreciated. And next up is Linda.
I think, Evan, I need to keep my answers brief. It's not the questioners.
Hi, Congressman Swalwell. I think you may have already answered my question in that you said that CA-15 is growing, but I was wondering if you had any idea of how the redistricting, which candidate we are going to lose in California, since I know we're going to be down one seat because of the census.
Hopefully it's Kevin McCarthy.
Or Devin Nunes.
Or Devin Nunes, or they both run against each other and the Democrat comes out and we lose both of them. But, so because of the growth in our district, we are district will shrink. It'll get a little bit smaller. The real issues with growth have been in the Central Valley and Los Angeles and Orange County. So somewhere between Bakersfield, Fresno, LA County, Orange County is where a seat will be lost, meaning like 2 districts will probably be collapsed. But you know, I still think, as I said earlier, that we have a real opportunity to pick up the 4 seats that we lost. And if we did that, here's my promise to you. I'm not a forecaster, I'm not a psychic, but if we pick up the 4 seats that we lost in 2018, we will keep the majority. And we have every reason to believe we can do that, because every candidate who lost in 2020 in California, they all received more votes in 2020 than they did in 2018. So it wasn't a matter of, you know, they did something unpopular or a major issue they found themselves on the wrong side of. Every candidate who lost received more votes in 2020 than they did in 2018. So what does that tell you? Donald Trump brought out his base. Well, Donald Trump's not on the ballot in 2020. And so if we can turn out our voters, put up solid candidates, we can achieve those 4 seats and keep the majority in the House.
All right, thank you very much. Next would be Van.
So to follow up on that basic response and question, you know, during the last 2 election cycles, we spent a lot of time asking people what their concerns were, but now it seems like Biden has answered many of those concerns. And I'm wondering if the Democratic Party is going to take the gloves off and start hitting the Republicans on their hypocrisy and their basic disdain for democratic institutions.
So Van, yes, I think the message has to be clear. Like for 2022, and Bianca, that's what I said 2020, 2022. I think the message should be can't fall back or can't go back. You know, just make it clear that this is an election about progress or regress, you know, progress or falling back to corruption, misogyny, racism, because we know where the Republicans want to go. I mean, whether it's out of fear or fealty, they are aligned with Donald Trump. And so if we just cast it as we can't go back, we have an economy that is starting to roar, unemployment that will be at 4% by the end of the year, Americans who are vaccinated, schools that are open, and of course, progress on these social justice issues, we cannot go back. And people know what back was. They don't want to go back. A friend of mine told me the other day that his 9-year-old son said, "Dad, is Joe Biden still the president?" And my buddy said, "Yeah, son, why would you ask me that?" And the 9-year-old said, "Well, we just don't see him on TV all the time. Like, I thought maybe he got thrown out." And the dad said, no, that's how it's supposed to be. Like, the president is not supposed to be a circus act on television all the time. And so I think competent but quiet is a strategy, you know, for us. And you're seeing with a 63% approval rating that it's working.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I know we have more questions, but I do really want to respect.
Yeah, I can take one more, Evan. Yeah, I'm in DC right now, so we're back early tomorrow, but I can take one more to close it out.
All right, we have one more. Next one then is Richard.
Hey, Richard.
Great to see you. Thanks for being
here, sir.
Please don't rule out running again, because you're getting worse by the day. You're just getting better, so don't rule that out. My question has to do with cybersecurity. I'm concerned about it because I don't know whether the administration sees it as something that the federal government needs to be on top of primarily, and secondarily it's corporative issue. But how do you look at it?
So we're seeing an escalation in ransomware attacks. So these are the attacks where companies are hacked and they're told by the hackers, pay X amount, otherwise we are going to lock you out and expose your most sensitive data to the public. And it's not only happening to, you know, companies, you know, that have a lot of wealth but may not touch critical infrastructure, but with Colonial Pipeline, it happened to a company that affects our daily lives. And we're seeing gas lines in America because the shortage that shutting down the pipeline caused. I think the question we have to, on ransom attacks, and I would welcome your feedback because I'm sorting through this myself. The policy question we have to take on is, should we make it illegal for a company to pay a ransom? And the argument for doing that is, if it's illegal for any American company to pay a ransom, then you disincentivize the hackers from hacking. Because if the company says, look, I'm not going to violate US law to pay this ransom, most of these hackers are what are considered professional hackers. And that sounds like a contradictory, but there is, believe it or not, honor among thieves. And many of these hackers, they know how the game works, and they themselves are quite professional. And if you pay the ransom, they will keep their word, and they will give you the keys back to your company because they want the next ransom to be paid, and they reputationally want to have a good reputation. So I think there is an argument for saying, you know what, no company can pay a ransom. And while there may still be some hacks, I actually think you may see an overall reduction in hacks. But I'm open to interpretation on that and analysis, but we are certainly exposed to more and more of these ransom attacks, and most importantly, ransom attacks on critical infrastructure. And that's what worries me the most. So I'd welcome your feedback. Second, you know, we need to have a federal breach notification law so that if you are breached, you have to tell the federal government. Right now, no such law exists. And we also need to make sure that, you know, we have a national standard for what's called cyber hygiene for businesses that are in critical infrastructure. But, you know, this is a new frontier, and it feels a lot like pre-September 11. You know, we know that the Colonial Pipeline hackers are in Russia, still learning whether the state of Russia sanctioned or supported this attack. But it feels like, you know, the Taliban in Afghanistan enabling Al-Qaeda to carry out the September 11 attack, where, you know, these hackers are certainly operating in a country that does not work with us or help us go after the hackers. And it's just got this feeling that it could be much, much worse. So lots of work to do in this area. This is in part why I stay on the Homeland Security, Intelligence, and Judiciary committees, because so many of our constituents at home, you know, work in this sphere and have a lot of expertise to give to me on it. So Evan, one more question from a 15-year-old. Evan, you tug at my heart when you say 15-year-old has a question. So.
Okay, yeah, I know. I told you I would respect your time.
That's okay, yeah.
Victor, if you'd like to go.
All right. Hi, Representative Swalwell. I've kept track of the work you do. I think that you're a great representative, and I appreciate the work that you do. But one thing I did that does come to mind to me in terms of regaining the House seats in California would be to, I think it's possible to mobilize more youth voters, of course, but I think that there should be a special focus on LGBTQ youth voters, of course, very reliably Democratic voters. And I think that it can be very underestimated how many of them there are. So it's more of a comment rather than a question, but that might be something to keep in mind.
What's your name, your first name?
Victor.
Victor, well, thank you, Victor. You know, the 2020 election saw record turnout among, you know, voters under the age of 30. And the 2018 election, for a midterm election, doubled the turnout for people under 30 from 2014, the last midterm election. And I agree with you because these issues are certainly at stake. You know, we saw today that the Supreme Court is going to be taking up a case in the fall to reverse Roe v. Wade. And I fear that the same could be true for, you know, same-sex marriage or the Equality Act, if we can get the Senate to pass it and President Biden to sign it into law. And so if anything, I hope that your generation recognizes that, you know, the gear shift for policy doesn't only go it's not only in drive, right? That there's other gears, that it could go actually in reverse, that we could in our lifetime see, abortions banned. We could see same-sex marriages again banned. We could see employers allowed to completely discriminate against employees because of who they choose to love. And I would love to work with you to mobilize young people. And Kevin Farley on my team is on this call. And Kevin, if you want to put your email in the chat there, just so we can start getting volunteers, because we're really serious about, as I said, making those calls, sending those texts, going into those congressional districts in California to do our part as a district that's always stepped up, not only to protect what we have in the Bay Area, but to expand across the state. So Victor, I'm counting you on the team to help us do that. And I'm going to put you in charge of, finding some of your peers to join us as well.
All right. Yeah. I also, maybe a little bit off topic, but I appreciate your hatred for Josh Hawley.
Yes. We also have to beat him in 2024, but
yes, he is one of my favorite senators.
Yeah. First things first, right? Yeah. Well, thank you all again. Evan, you're doing a great job with the club. This is a great turnout for a Monday night. And by the way, just some news from us. We are doing our part to, continue to contribute to Democrats. We have a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and we've got another baby on the way in November. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, my birthday's also in November. So
there you go. November 11 is the due date. So
very close. I'm 5. So I want to thank you again for coming out. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for answering all of our questions, and thank you for all you do for us in Congress. This club has your back, and we support you full-heartedly. I know some people didn't get their questions answered, so I would say that if you have any other questions, also email Kevin. He'll be able to help you or connect you with someone.
And you can email me too. I will. I just put my email in the chat as well. So.
Awesome. And thank you so much for coming out. Have a wonderful evening. Great. Get some sleep. It's late where you are.
Thank you, guys.